The massive arena of Vorthak Prime stretched out like a metal and stone monster under the purple sky. Thousands of alien creatures filled the seats that rose up in circles around the fighting pit below. Their voices mixed together in a sound, like thunder as they waited for blood. Kim Tae-ho stood in chains at the edge of the arena floor. The metal around his wrists felt cold against his skin. He looked up at the crowd without fear in his dark eyes. Creatures with too many arms pointed at him. Things with scales and fur made sounds he could not understand. But they all wanted the same thing. They wanted to see him die. 3 weeks ago, Tae-ho had been teaching martial arts to children in Seoul. Now he was a slave fighter on a world so far from Earth that the sun looked like a red dot in the sky. The pirates who took his transport ship had sold him like a piece of meat. The alien traders who bought him had laughed when they saw how small he was compared to the other fighters. "Look at this soft thing," one of them had said in broken human language. "The crowd will enjoy watching it break." But Tae-ho did not feel broken. He breathed slowly and watched everything around him. This was what his old master had taught him. Watch first, understand second, act third. The arena master stepped into the center of the fighting pit. He was tall and thin with blue skin that looked like wet leather. His voice came out loud through speakers hidden in the walls. "Citizens of the galaxy," the arena master called out, "today we have fresh meat for your entertainment." A human from the small world called Earth. The crowd made sounds of excitement. Some laughed. Some made clicking noises with parts of their bodies that humans did not have. In the seats closest to the fighting pit, creatures with money placed bets on how long the human would last. "But first," the arena master continued, "let us see our champion, the killer of 200 fighters, the one who has never lost a battle, Gorvak the Destroyer." A gate on the far side of the arena opened with a sound like metal screaming. Something huge walked out into the light. Gorvak stood 7 feet tall on legs like tree trunks. His skin was covered in green and black scales that looked harder than armor. His arms ended in hands with claws as long as kitchen knives. When he opened his mouth to roar at the crowd, Tae-ho could see teeth that could tear through steel. The crowd went wild. They shouted Gorvak's name and threw things into the arena. The champion raised his clawed hands above his head and soaked up their love like a plant drinking water. But Tae-ho noticed something else. As Gorvak looked around at the crowd, the alien's eyes seemed to glow brighter. His muscles looked bigger. His claws looked sharper. The human had heard stories about creatures who could feed on emotions. Now he was seeing one. "In 3 days," the arena master announced, "this human will face our champion. The odds are 1,000 to 1 against the soft skin living through the first minute." The crowd laughed so hard that the arena shook. Some creatures fell out of their seats. Others made sounds that might have been applause if they had hands to clap with. Gorvak looked across the arena at Tae-ho. The champion's glowing eyes met the human's calm gaze. For a moment, something like confusion crossed the alien's face. Most creatures showed fear when they looked at him. This small human looked at him the way someone might look at a puzzle they wanted to solve. The arena master pointed at Tae-ho with one long blue finger. "Take the human back to the pens. Let him think about his death for 3 days. Maybe the fear will make him taste better." Guards came and unlocked Tae-ho's chains. They pushed him toward a tunnel that led under the arena. As he walked, he could hear the crowd still laughing behind him. The sound followed him into the darkness like hungry ghosts. The gladiator pens were carved out of rock deep under the arena floor. Each fighter had a small room with stone walls and metal bars for a door. The air smelled like sweat and fear and something else. Something that reminded Tae-ho of the zoo back home where they kept the meat-eating animals. The guards pushed him into an empty room and locked the door. Through the bars, Tae-ho could see into the main area where the other fighters spent their time. There were creatures he had never imagined. A being made of what looked like living crystal sat in one corner. Its body threw rainbow colors on the walls when the light hit it right. An insect-like thing with too many legs was doing something that might have been exercise. In another corner, a woman sat with her back against the wall. She was human. Tae-ho had not expected to find another person from Earth in this place. The woman looked up when she heard the guards leave. Her hair was short and dark, Scars crossed her arms like white lines drawn on brown skin, but her eyes were alive and smart. "Another human," she said in Korean. Her voice sounded tired, but not broken. I was starting to think I was the only one. "My name is Kim Tae-ho," he said through the bars. "I am Park Kira," she replied. "How long have you been here?" 3 days since they brought me to this world. "You?" 6 months. Kira stood up and walked closer to his door. 6 months of staying alive in that arena up there. Do you know who you are supposed to fight? Gorvak the Destroyer? Kira's face went white. She grabbed the bars of his door with both hands. "No, they cannot do that. You are too new. You do not know how to survive here yet. Tell me about him," Tae-ho said. Kira looked around to make sure no guards were listening. Then she spoke in a voice so quiet, he had to lean close to the bars to hear her. "Gorvak is not just strong. His people can eat fear and anger. The more scared his enemy is, the stronger he gets. The more his enemy hates him, the faster he moves. I have seen him fight creatures twice his size. By the end of the battle, he was so full of their fear that he could tear through metal with his bare hands. What happened to those creatures? Dead. All of them. Gorvak does not just win his fights. He destroys everything that shows fear in front of him." Tae-ho was quiet for a long time. Around them, the other gladiators settled in for another night, of waiting for their turn to fight or die. The crystal being hummed a song that sounded like wind through broken glass. The insect creature cleaned its weapons with movements too fast for human eyes to follow. Finally, Kira spoke again. "I have survived this long because I am fast and I am smart, but I have never faced Gorvak. They save him for fighters who have proven themselves or for special events. You must be their idea of entertainment." "Maybe," Tae-ho said. He sat down on the stone floor of his room and closed his eyes. "What are you doing?" Kira asked, thinking. About escape? About fighting? About dying? Tae-ho opened his eyes and looked at her through the bars. "About understanding." Kira stared at him like he had said something in a language she did not know. Around them, the gladiator pens grew quiet as the other fighters tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring more training, more fear, more death. But tonight in the darkness under the arena, a human sat perfectly still and thought about a 7-foot monster who ate emotions. And for the first time since his capture, Kim Tae-ho smiled. The next morning came too early in the gladiator pens. Guards banged metal sticks against the bars and shouted for the fighters to wake up. Tae-ho had been sitting in the same position all night, breathing slowly and keeping his mind clear. While the other fighters groaned and complained about the hard stone floors, he felt rested. Kira looked at him through the bars between their rooms. "Did you sleep at all?" "I meditated," Tae-ho said. "It is better than sleep for what I need to do." The guards opened the doors and pushed the fighters toward a large room where alien slaves served something that might have been food. Tae-ho took a bowl of the gray paste and sat at a table made from black stone. The taste reminded him of metal mixed with old vegetables, but he ate it anyway. His body needed fuel. Kira sat across from him. Around them, the other gladiators talked, in languages that sounded like music or machines or angry animals, but they all had the same look in their eyes. They were waiting to die. "You need to know more about Gorvak," Kira said quietly. "If you are going to have any chance at all, tell me," Tae-ho said. Kira looked around to make sure no guards were close enough to hear. His people come from a world where emotions are like food. They can smell fear from across a room. They can taste anger in the air. When they fight, they eat these feelings and become stronger. How much stronger? I saw him fight a creature called Brack the Bone Crusher last year. Brack was 8 feet tall and made of muscle and hate. When the fight started, Brack was stronger than Gorvak, but Brack was so angry that he could not think straight. Gorvak ate that anger and grew twice as fast. By the end, Gorvak was throwing Brack around like a toy. Tae-ho ate another spoonful of the gray paste and thought about this. What about creatures who were not angry? There have not been any. Everyone who faces Gorvak is either angry or scared, usually both. That is how normal people react when something wants to kill them. After breakfast, the guards took the fighters to the training area. It was a wide room with weapons hanging on the walls and practice targets made from metal and wood. Some fighters lifted heavy stones to build their muscles. Others swung swords at cloth dummies stuffed with sand. Tae-ho found an empty corner and began to move through the forms his old master had taught him. He moved like water flowing around rocks. His hands cut through the air like knives, but there was no anger in the movements, no hate, no fear. The other fighters stopped there, training to watch. They had never seen anything like this. The human moved as if he were dancing, but every motion could have been used to break bones or stop hearts. The crystal being walked over to where Tae-ho was practicing. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I am called Shamara," it said. "I have fought in this arena for 2 years. I have never seen movements like yours." Tae-ho stopped and bowed to the crystal being. "I am Tae-ho. These are forms from my world. They teach the mind to be calm while the body fights." Calm. Shamara repeated the word like it was something rare and valuable. "Is this how you plan to face Gorvak?" Yes. Shamara's crystal body flashed colors that might have been laughter or sadness. "Calm will not save you from his claws, human. I have seen what he does to fighters who think they are clever." "What happened to them?" "They died badly." That afternoon, Tae-ho sat with an old fighter called Zeth. The alien looked like a giant turtle that had learned to walk on 2 legs. His shell was covered with scars from many battles. His eyes were old and tired, but still smart. "You want to know about Gorvak?" Zeth said. It was not a question. "Yes. I have been in this arena longer than anyone else still breathing. I have seen fighters try everything against him. Speed, strength, tricks, weapons, teamwork. All of them failed." "Why?" Zeth lifted his head to look at the ceiling far above them. "Because they all fed him what he needed. Their fear made him faster. Their anger made him stronger. Their hate made him want to kill more than anything else in the universe. Has anyone ever fought him without these emotions?" "No." Zeth looked at Tae-ho with ancient eyes. "But I have wondered what would happen if someone did. His people need emotional food like we need air to breathe. Without it, they are just big lizards with sharp teeth." That evening, Kira came to sit by Tae-ho's door. The human was sitting perfectly still again, breathing so slowly that she had to watch carefully to see his chest move. "Are you meditating again?" she asked. "Yes." "What do you think about when you do that?" Tae-ho opened his eyes. "Nothing. That is the point." Kira shook her head. "I do not understand. How can you think about nothing when you are going to fight a monster in 2 days? Because thinking about the monster will not help me beat him. Worrying about dying will not help me live. Fear will only feed him and make him stronger. But you must be scared. Everyone gets scared." "Fear is natural," Tae-ho said. "But I do not have to let it control me. My master taught me that emotions are like clouds in the sky. They come and go, but the sky remains clear." Kira was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "I have been scared every day for 6 months. It is the only thing that has kept me alive. Fear makes me run faster and think quicker." "Fear can help," Tae-ho agreed. "But it can also make you weak. It depends on how you use it." The next day was Tae-ho's last day before the fight. Word had spread through the arena that the human was planning something strange. Fighters who had never spoken to each other gathered around his corner of the training room to watch him practice. His movements had become even more flowing, even more calm. He looked like he was swimming through invisible water. When he stopped, there was no sweat on his face. His breathing was as steady as a sleeping child's. Gorvak himself came to watch. The champion stood in the doorway of the training room like a green and black mountain, his yellow eyes focused on the small human who moved without fear. Other fighters backed away from Gorvak, but Tae-ho continued his practice as if the monster was not there. "So you are the one they call the calm human," Gorvak said. His voice sounded like rocks falling down a cliff. Teho finished his form and turned to face the champion. He bowed politely. "I am Kim Teho." Gorvak laughed. The sound made the weapons on the wall shake. "Do you know what I am going to do to you tomorrow, little human? You are going to try to kill me. I am going to tear you apart slowly. I am going to make you scream until your voice breaks. I am going to eat your fear until it makes me strong enough to crush mountains." Teho looked at Gorvak with the same calm expression he had worn since arriving at the arena. "You are welcome to try." The champion's eyes glowed brighter. He leaned forward, expecting to smell fear or anger from the human. Instead, he smelled nothing. It was as if Teho was not really there. Gorvak straightened up, confused. In his long life, he had never met a creature that did not react to his presence with some kind of strong emotion. Even the bravest fighters showed fear when they looked at him. Even the angriest warriors felt doubt when he threatened them. But this human looked at him like he was looking at a tree or a rock, something that existed but was not particularly important. "Tomorrow will be interesting," Gorvak said and walked away. That night, Teho sat in his room and prepared his mind for what was coming. Around him, the other fighters tried to sleep, but many of them stayed awake thinking about the fight they would watch tomorrow. Some had placed bets on how long the human would last. Most said less than 1 minute. But in the darkness under the arena, Kim Teho breathed slowly and felt his mind become as still as deep water. Tomorrow he would face a monster that ate emotions and grew stronger from fear and anger. He planned to give it nothing to eat at all. The day of the great fight arrived with the sound of drums echoing through the gladiator pens. Teho woke from his meditation as he had for the past 3 days, feeling calm and ready. Around him, the other fighters were already awake, talking in whispers about what they expected to see. Guards came early to prepare him. They gave him simple leather armor that covered his chest and arms. They offered him weapons from a rack that held swords, spears, and clubs made from alien metals. Teho looked at each weapon carefully, then shook his head. "I will fight with my hands," he said. The guards laughed. One of them, a blue-skinned creature with too many eyes, spoke in broken human language. "Hands against Gorvak claws? You die faster that way. More fun for crowd." Teho said nothing. He had learned long ago that trying to explain his choices to people who could not understand them was a waste of time and energy. Kira pressed against the bars of her room as they led him away. "Remember what I told you about his feeding," she called out. "Do not give him anything to eat." Teho nodded to her and followed the guards through tunnels that led upward toward the arena floor. With each step, the sound of the crowd grew louder. Thousands of alien voices mixed together in a noise like a storm. The tunnel ended at a metal gate. Through the bars, Teho could see the arena floor spread out under the purple sky. Every seat was filled. Creatures that had traveled from dozens of worlds sat shoulder to shoulder, waiting to see the human die. The arena master's voice boomed through speakers hidden in the walls. "Citizens of the galaxy, today we have a special treat. The champion Gorvak the Destroyer will face a human who thinks he can survive without weapons." The crowd erupted in laughter and cheers. Some aliens threw objects into the arena. Others made sounds that might have been applause or might have been hunger. But first, let us welcome our champion. A gate on the far side of the arena opened. Gorvak walked out into the sunlight, and the crowd went wild. He was even bigger than he had looked in the training room. His scales caught the light like green and black armor. His claws gleamed like polished knives. When he raised his arms above his head, the muscles in his shoulders looked like boulders. Gorvak began his war dance. He moved in circles around the center of the arena, roaring and slashing at the air. His claws left marks in the stone floor. His roars shook dust from the walls. Several creatures in the front rows fainted from fear just watching him. The dance was designed to terrify his opponents before the fight even began. For 3 years it had worked perfectly. Fighters who saw Gorvak's war dance often collapsed or tried to run before the first blow was struck. But when the arena master called for the human to enter, something different happened. The gate opened, and Teho walked calmly onto the arena floor. He did not run. He did not shake. He did not cry out in fear. He simply walked to the center of the fighting area and stood quietly. The crowd's noise died down as they tried to understand what they were seeing. This was not how humans were supposed to act. Where was the screaming? Where was the begging for mercy? Tejo looked around the arena at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. He bowed politely to the crowd in each direction. Then, he turned to face Gorvak and bowed to his opponent as well. Gorvak stopped his war dance, confused. The bow was a sign of respect, not fear. In all his years of fighting, no opponent had ever bowed to him. They screamed, they threatened, they begged, but they never showed respect. "What are you doing, little human?" Gorvak called across the arena. "I am greeting a worthy opponent," Tejo replied, his voice calm and clear. The crowd murmured in confusion. This was not the script they expected. Betting numbers on the display screens began to change as some aliens wondered if they had made the right choices. The arena master raised his hand for silence. "Let the battle begin." Gorvak charged immediately, expecting to end the fight in seconds. His powerful legs carried him across the arena floor faster than a running horse. His claws stretched out to tear the human apart. His mouth opened in a roar that had frozen the blood of 200 previous opponents. But as he ran, something felt wrong. Usually by this point in a fight, Gorvak could taste his opponent's fear in the air. The terror would make him stronger and faster with each step. Now he felt nothing. It was as if he was running toward empty air. Tejo stood perfectly still until the last possible moment. Then he moved like water flowing around a rock. He stepped to one side, letting Gorvak's charge carry the alien past him. As the champion stumbled to regain his balance, Tejo was already moving to a new position. Gorvak spun around, angry now. He slashed with his claws, but they cut only air. The human had moved again, flowing away from the attack like smoke in the wind. "Stand still and fight," Gorvak roared. "I am fighting," Tejo said calmly. "This is how I fight," the champion attacked. Again and again his claws found nothing. Tejo moved with the grace of a dancer and the precision of a surgeon. He never seemed to hurry, but he was never where Gorvak expected him to be. The crowd began to notice something strange. Gorvak should have been getting stronger as the fight continued. His species always grew more powerful as they fed on their opponent's emotions, but he looked the same as when the fight had started. If anything, he seemed to be moving a little slower. Gorvak felt it too. For the first time in his life, he was fighting at only his normal strength. Without fear to feed on, without anger to drink, he was just a large lizard with sharp claws. He was still dangerous, but he was not the monster that had killed 200 opponents. "Why do you not fear me?" Gorvak demanded between attacks. "Fear would make me slower," Tejo replied, still moving like flowing water. "Anger would make me stupid. I need to be fast and smart to survive. But I am Gorvak the Destroyer. I am death itself. You are a fighter, like me. Nothing more." These words hit Gorvak harder than any physical blow could have. His entire identity was built on being feared. He was the nightmare that other gladiators whispered about in the dark. He was the monster that made grown warriors wet themselves with terror. But this small human looked at him and saw just another fighter. For the first time in his adult life, Gorvak felt something he had never experienced before. He felt doubt. The emotion was weak and unfamiliar, but it was there, growing in his chest like a cold seed. And doubt, unlike fear or anger, could not be eaten. It could only make him weaker. Tejo seemed to sense the change in his opponent. He stopped moving, away from Gorvak's attacks, and began to move closer. His hands struck out like striking snakes, hitting pressure points on the alien's arms and legs. Each touch was gentle, but they left Gorvak's limbs feeling heavy and slow. "What are you doing to me?" Gorvak gasped. "I am showing you that strength, without wisdom, is just noise," Tejo said. The crowd was on its feet now, trying to understand what they were seeing. The human was not trying to hurt Gorvak. He was not fighting to kill or destroy. He was simply neutralizing threats as they appeared, like a doctor treating a disease. Gorvak swung his claws in a wide arc, putting all his remaining strength into the attack. But doubt had made him slow, and confusion had made him clumsy. Tejo stepped inside the swing and placed his palm gently against the alien's chest. The touch was soft, but it carried the force of perfect timing and complete understanding. Gorvak felt his breath leave his lungs. His legs buckled. For the first time in 3 years, the champion of the arena fell to his knees. The crowd was silent. In the gladiator pens below, Kira pressed her face against the bars, hardly believing what she was seeing. Even the guards had stopped talking to watch. Tejo stood over the fallen champion, his breathing still calm and steady. He could have struck again. He could have finished the fight. Instead, he stepped back and waited. "Get up," he said quietly. "We are not finished yet." Gorvak looked up at the human with confusion in his glowing eyes. "Why do you not kill me? You have won." "Winning and killing are not the same thing," Tejo replied. "Get up and I will show you the difference." And in that moment, as Gorvak struggled to his feet to face an opponent who fought without hatred, the galaxy began to see something it had never seen before. They saw a human way of fighting that was about understanding rather than destroying. The real battle was just beginning. Gorvak stood up slowly, his legs shaking like a newborn animal trying to walk. The doubt in his chest had grown stronger, and with it came something even worse. Fear. Not the delicious fear he was used to eating from his opponents, but his own fear, cold and bitter and making him weak. For 3 years he had been the most feared creature in the galaxy. Now he was afraid of a small human who fought like dancing water. "I do not understand," Gorvak said, his voice no longer a roar, but almost a whisper. "Why are you not afraid of me? Why do you not hate me for what I am going to do to you?" Tejo moved into a new stance, his feet spread apart for balance, his hands open and ready. "What are you going to do to me?" "I am going to kill you." "Are you?" The simple question hit Gorvak like a physical blow. For the first time in his adult life, he was not certain he could win a fight. The doubt grew stronger, feeding on itself like a hungry animal. "I have killed 200 fighters," Gorvak said, trying to convince himself as much as the human. 200 fighters who gave you their fear to eat." Tejo replied calmly. 200 fighters who made you stronger with their anger and terror. What happens when you fight someone who gives you nothing? Gorvak charged again, but this time his movements were wild and desperate. His claws whistled through the air where Tejo had been standing a moment before. The human flowed around the attack like smoke, never hurrying but never caught. "Stand still," Gorvak screamed. "Fight me properly." "This is proper fighting," Tejo said. He moved closer to the alien and touched a spot on Gorvak's shoulder. The champion's right arm went numb. "My teacher called it the water method. Water does not fight the rock. Water flows around the rock and slowly wears it away." The crowd was beginning to understand that they were watching something new. This was not a normal gladiator fight. This was a lesson being taught with fists and feet instead of words. Gorvak swung his left arm in a wide arc, trying to catch the human who kept dancing away from him. But his right arm hung useless at his side, and his balance was wrong. Tejo stepped inside the swing and touched another pressure point. Now both of Gorvak's arms felt heavy and slow. "What are you doing to me?" Gorvak gasped. "I am showing you what happens when strength meets understanding," Tejo said. "Your people became strong by eating emotions, but you never learned to fight without that food. You never learned to face an opponent who does not feed you." Gorvak tried to grab the human with his claws, but his arms moved like they were underwater. Tejo avoided the grab easily and struck 2 more pressure points on the alien's legs. Gorvak stumbled and almost fell. "This is not possible," Gorvak said. "I am the strongest fighter in the galaxy." "You were the strongest fighter who had ever faced opponents full of fear and anger," Tejo corrected. "But strength without wisdom is just destruction without purpose." The alien's movements became more frantic as desperation replaced confidence. He had never been in a fight that lasted this long without his strength growing. Usually by now, he would have been twice as strong as when the fight started. Instead, he felt weaker than he had ever felt in his life. "Why do you not hate me?" Gorvak demanded as he swung his claws in another wild attack. "I have killed creatures you would call friends. I have destroyed families. I have brought pain and death to hundreds of worlds. Teho blocked the attack, gently, redirecting the force instead of meeting it head-on. Hating you would not bring back the creatures you killed. Hating you would only make me angry, and anger makes fighters stupid. But I am evil. I am a destroyer. You should want to hurt me. You are what your life made you, Teho said simply. Your people taught you that strength comes from eating fear. Your world rewarded you for causing pain. You became what you were taught to become. These words confused Gorvak more than any physical attack could have. No one had ever suggested that he was anything other than a monster by choice. The idea that his nature might not be entirely his fault was something he had never considered. I chose to kill, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Did you? Or were you taught that killing was the only way to survive? Gorvak's next attack was slower and weaker than the one before. Doubt and confusion were eating him from the inside, making him question everything he believed about himself. For a creature that fed on certainty and strength, this was worse than any physical wound. Teho moved closer, no longer just avoiding attacks, but beginning to counter them. His strikes were still gentle, still precise. He hit pressure points that made Gorvak's muscles relax. He touched nerve clusters that sent waves of calm through the alien's body. "What are you doing now?" Gorvak asked. His voice sounded different, less like a roar and more like a normal voice. "I am showing you that there are other ways to win than destruction," Teho said. "My people learned long ago that the greatest victory is to defeat an enemy without destroying them. I do not understand. If I kill you, I gain nothing except a reputation for violence. If I help you understand, I gain a teacher who can show others a better way." Gorvak stopped attacking altogether. He stood in the center of the arena, swaying slightly as the pressure point touches made his body feel strange and relaxed. Around them, the crowd had grown silent. They were watching something they had never seen before. "You want to teach me?" Gorvak asked. "I want to show you that strength can be used for something other than causing fear, but I am a destroyer. It is what I am." "It is what you were," Teho corrected. "What you are now depends on what you choose to do next." The alien looked around the arena at the thousands of faces watching him. For 3 years, those faces had looked at him with terror and excitement. They had cheered for his violence and celebrated his cruelty. Now they looked confused, uncertain, as if they were seeing him for the first time. "I do not know how to be anything else," Gorvak said quietly. "Then let me teach you." Teho stepped closer to the alien, close enough that Gorvak could have grabbed him easily, but instead of attacking, the champion just stood there looking lost and confused. "How?" Gorvak asked. "The same way I learned. By watching, by listening, by understanding that true strength comes from within, not from eating the weakness of others." Gorvak's legs gave out and he sank to his knees on the arena floor. The doubt and confusion had drained all his energy. For the first time since he was a child, he felt small and weak and afraid. But this fear was different from the fear he had eaten from his opponents. This fear was about change, about becoming something new, about admitting that everything he had believed about himself might be wrong. "I do not want to be a destroyer anymore," he whispered. Teho knelt beside the fallen champion and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Then do not be one." The crowd erupted in chaos. Some aliens cheered, others booed. Many just sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had witnessed. In the gladiator pens below, Kira pressed her face against the bars and smiled for the first time in 6 months. The arena master's voice echoed through the speakers, but he seemed as confused as everyone else. The human appears to have. I am not sure what has happened here." Gorvak looked up at Teho with new eyes. "Will you really teach me?" "If you want to learn. What will you teach me first?" Teho smiled, the first real smile he had shown since arriving on this world. "I will teach you how to fight without hatred." And in that moment, as the former destroyer knelt beside the human who had defeated him without cruelty, something changed in the galaxy. A new way of thinking about strength and victory began to spread outward from the arena like ripples in a pond. The revolution had begun. The arena fell silent as Taeho helped Gorvak stand up. The former champion looked different now. His scales had lost their fierce shine. His claws seemed smaller. His eyes no longer glowed with predatory hunger. He looked like what he truly was under all the fear and violence, a lost creature trying to understand his place in the universe. The arena master's voice crackled through the speakers, uncertain and confused. The fight appears to be over, but the human has not killed his opponent. According to arena rules, the winner must— The rules are wrong. Taeho's voice carried clearly across the arena floor. He looked up at the thousands of alien faces, staring down at him. Many of them had traveled across the galaxy to see blood and death. Instead, they had witnessed something none of them understood. I came here to fight for my freedom. Taeho continued. I have won that fight. But victory does not require death. Strength does not require cruelty. And defeating an enemy does not mean you must destroy them. Gorvak stood beside the human, still shaking from the changes happening inside his mind. He speaks truth, the alien said, his voice carrying across the arena without its usual roar. I have been defeated, but I am not destroyed. This human has shown me something I never knew existed. The crowd began to murmur. Some aliens looked angry that their entertainment had been ruined. Others seemed curious about what they had witnessed. A few looked thoughtful, as if the words spoken in the arena had planted seeds in their minds. In the expensive seats where the wealthy and powerful aliens sat, urgent conversations began. Representatives from different worlds whispered to each other about the implications of what they had seen. If humans could defeat opponents without destroying them, what did that mean for trade agreements, for peace treaties, for the way wars were fought? Arena Master Vex climbed down from his booth and walked onto the arena floor. His blue skin looked pale and his movements were uncertain. This was not how gladiator fights were supposed to end. Human, he said, stopping a safe distance from Taeho. You have broken every tradition of this arena. Fighters are supposed to kill or be killed. There is no third option. Then maybe it is time for new traditions, Taeho replied calmly. The crowd paid to see death. The crowd saw something more valuable than death. They saw transformation. Vex looked around at the stands full of confused and argumentative aliens. Some were demanding their money back. Others were asking questions about this human fighting style. Still others were placing new bets on whether more fights could end this way. What am I supposed to do with both of you? Vex asked. Free us, Taeho said simply. I have won my freedom through combat. Gorvak has earned his freedom through change. I cannot just free gladiators. There are rules. There are contracts. There are people who own you. Before Taeho could answer, a new voice spoke from the stands. It belonged to Ambassador Kenth, a tall gray alien who represented the Galactic Trade Council. He stood up in his seat and addressed the arena master. I will buy both their contracts, Kenth announced. The council is very interested in studying this human fighting method. Another voice called out from a different section. The healers. Guild will pay double for the human. We want to understand his pressure point techniques. Soon, dozens of aliens were shouting offers for Taeho's contract. Scientists wanted to study his methods. Diplomats wanted to hire him as a negotiator. Military leaders wanted to learn his techniques. Even some gladiator arena owners wanted to hire him to teach their fighters this new way of combat. But Taeho raised his hand for silence. I am not for sale, he said. I am free. That was the point of this fight. Then what will you do? Asked. Ambassador Kenth. Taeho looked at Gorvak, who was listening to everything with growing amazement. I will teach. Anyone who wants to learn how to fight without hatred, I will teach. Anyone who wants to understand that strength can be used for creation instead of destruction, I will show them. And where will you do this teaching? Taeho looked around the arena, at the walls that had seen so much death and suffering. Here, turn this place of death into a place of learning. Instead of gladiators killing each other for entertainment, let it become a school where different species learn to understand each other. The suggestion sent shockwaves through the crowd. The idea of turning the galaxy's most famous death arena into a school was so radical that many aliens could not even imagine it. But Ambassador Kenth was nodding slowly. The Trade Council has been looking for ways to reduce conflicts between species. Most wars start because different peoples do not understand each other. If this human can teach understanding, I can, Tejo said confidently. But I will need help. He turned to Gorvak. Will you be my first student? The former destroyer looked at the human who had changed his life in the space of a single fight. You would trust me to learn from you? Trust must start somewhere. Why not here? Gorvak knelt on the arena floor in front of Tejo, a gesture that sent gasps through the crowd. For 3 years he had been the most feared creature in this place. Now he was kneeling before a human half his size. I accept, Gorvak said. Teach me how to be something other than a destroyer. The arena erupted in chaos. Some aliens cheered, others booed. Many were too shocked to make any sound at all. In the gladiator pens below, Kira and the other fighters pressed against their bars, hardly believing what they were seeing. Over the following days, everything changed. News of the fight spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communications could carry it. On 1,000 worlds, the story was told and retold. The human who fought without hatred. The destroyer who chose to learn instead of kill. The arena where death became transformation. Species that had been enemies for centuries began to send representatives to learn about this new way of thinking about conflict. The arena was rebuilt with classrooms instead of weapon racks, gardens, replaced the sand pits where gladiators had died. Tejo kept his promise to teach anyone who wanted to learn. His first students were the former gladiators from the pens below the arena. Kira learned to fight with calm instead of desperation. Shimara the Crystal being learned to use her natural gifts for healing instead of just survival. Even old Zeth found that his ancient wisdom was valued in this new place of learning, but his most dedicated student was Gorvak. The former destroyer threw himself into learning with the same intensity he had once used for killing. He practiced meditation until he could sit still for hours. He studied the pressure point techniques until he could heal instead of harm. Most importantly, he learned to see opponents as puzzles to solve instead of enemies to destroy. Within a year, other arenas across the galaxy began to change their rules. Some allowed fighters to win through submission instead of death. Others started offering classes in conflict resolution alongside combat training. A few closed their fighting pits entirely and became centers for diplomatic training. The change spread outward like ripples in a vast pond. Trade disputes that might have led to wars were solved through understanding instead of violence. Border conflicts were resolved when species learned to see each other's perspectives. Even pirate raids decreased as former raiders learned there were better ways to make a living than through fear and violence. Tejo stood in what had once been the center of the death arena, now a peaceful garden where aliens from dozens of species came to learn and teach. Gorvak knelt beside him, demonstrating a meditation technique to a group of young warriors from various worlds. Do you think it will last? Gorvak asked during a break in the lessons. Change is like water, Tejo replied, watching the mixed group of students practice together. Once it starts flowing, it finds a way around every obstacle. And if some species refuse to change, if they prefer the old ways of violence and hatred, Tejo smiled. Then we will be patient with them. We will show them, through our example, that there is a better way, and eventually, like you, they will choose to learn instead of destroy. As the two teachers returned to their students, the galaxy continued to change around them. The revolution that had started with a single fight in a gladiator arena was spreading to every corner of civilized space, and at its heart was a simple human truth that had taken the galaxy by surprise. The strongest victory was the one that created allies instead of corpses. The greatest strength was the wisdom to fight without hatred. And the most profound change came not from destroying enemies, but from helping them become something better than they were before. In learning to fight without hatred, the galaxy had discovered how to achieve victory without creating new enemies. And that discovery would echo through the stars for generations to come.